Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone coming in. I want to welcome you all to A Beginning, part of the Loss, Life, and Love Festival taking place across Lamott Park and shared with the entire world online. Together, we acknowledge our mortality, mourn those who we've lost, and celebrate our strength. This is a community-driven initiative sparked by Reimagine, a nonprofit organization that believes that by facing death, we begin to live more fully. Your support in the form of your presence, your participation, your feedback, and any donations help make this festival possible. These are the Reimagine Zoom cats, owned by my colleague, Derek Cosberg. And I want to make sure everyone knows that the most important feature here is the CC button at the bottom. You'll be able to activate a live transcript should you need it. So please do so. My name is Andrew Engel. And for anyone who needs a visual description, I'm a white cisgender male. I've got glasses, grayish hair, and I've got a black and white striped shirt and an orange wall in the background. I'm zooming in, not from Lamott Park, but from the traditional territory of Lenape-Hoking. And that's the indigenous name of the land where New York City is located. And I ask you to join me in acknowledging the Native communities in North America, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This statement that I'm making is a small step to continue the process of dismantling the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and white supremacy. At Reimagine, I am the senior programmer, but I had absolutely nothing to do with programming Lost, Life, and Love. I want to give thanks to our local LA Festival team, Ben Caldwell, Angela Jackson, Kaya Dantzler, Leanne Hahn, Fishbone, and DJ Quest. And I also want to thank the Reimagine team, as always, for helping and supporting this team in putting this festival together. You might be here today in wonder, in preparation, in remembrance, or in an effort to live more fully. No matter your reason, Reimagine aims to help everyone's voice be heard. So, to prompt this dialogue, please share in the chat, if you will, why you're here and why this event matters to you. Please go ahead. And now to preface tonight's program, I want to offer this intention for Lost, Life, and Love in Lamott Park. There is no life without death, no love without loss. They are in constant complementary motion. In the face of grief, racism, illness, violence, and isolation, we are here in this community reimagining a changed world, kinder, slower, more just. We are reimagining the giving and receiving of love, the cycles of loss and new beginnings, and what it means to be fully alive. We are here. After this 1-hour conversation tonight with our special guests, who I'll introduce soon, I invite all of you to join us for our opening night showcase. It's at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And you can find the virtual schedule and links in the chat, which my colleague Misha Jane will paste. And that includes tonight's showcase, tomorrow's workshops, and Saturday's street festival. Okay, and now enough from me and a few words about our facilitators. Mahogany L. Browne is an author, poet, performer, organizer, educator, and nonprofit leader. And this month she was a featured guest at Reimagine's Candlelight Vigil. Mahogany serves as executive director of Just Media, a literacy initiative with a focus on the criminal legal system, and she lives in Brooklyn. Rabbi Sidney Mintz is a longtime Reimagine Advisory Council member and has been a guest at several reimagined vigils. She has served as spiritual leader of Congregation Emmanuel in San Francisco for 22 years. She serves on the national board of Bend the Arc, a Jewish partnership for justice. Her sold-out one-woman show, you may think I'm funny, but it's not, was included in the 2019 Reimagine Festival in San Francisco. And you can read their full bios and the bios of our featured speakers tonight in the event listing, which Misha will paste in the chat. And now I'm going to hand this over to Mahogany and Rabbi Sydney to introduce our special guests.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mahogany L. Browne, and I'll be introducing Medusa. As a West Coast baby, lover of hip hop, and lifelong fan of lyricism, it is my absolute honor to introduce the godmother of West Coast hip hop, Medusa, respected artist who makes scenes as a performer and an educator. Informed by legacies of the blues and jazz women that preceded her, she is committed to creating community through music. She was a central figure in Good Life Cafe and Project Blowed in Los Angeles's Lamott Park as an open mic workshop space for emerging hip hop artists. With Nappy at the Roots, a musician's showcase and collective, she created opportunities for artists to further develop their craft. One of the first hip hop artists to assemble a live band, her crew, Feline Science, charted new musical paths in their blend of soul and hip hop. As a queer hip hop artist, reframing and expanding our understanding of the influence of women and women of color musicians and performers on the creation of community, social activism, and popular music aesthetics. It is Medusa who inspired me, a Black woman writer from California. I'm heavily aware and influenced by Black women artists that make a clearing in the path for artists like myself, and who have the audacity to spit at the same level and expertise as any of their literary counterparts, regardless of gender. Therefore, it's because of Medusa's wit, grit, and fervor that my being is possible. I'm excited to speak to her later.
Thank you so much, Mahogany, for that amazing introduction.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
I'm Rabbi Sydney Mintz, and it's my honor to be able to introduce Anne Lamott, who is the incredible author who, as we saw in the chat, so many people are here to honor and to learn from. She was actually inducted into the California Hall of Fame. She's the recipient of a Guggenheim Award Fellowship. She has taught at UC Davis, and for so many of us, she is a very faithful inspiration as a person of faith and is an author, both in nonfiction and fiction. And when I think about my connection to Annie Lamott, early in my life, I was pregnant a little after her, and I read her book, Operating Instructions. And I think if you haven't read Operating Instructions and you are a parent, or you know a parent, or you know any children, you have to read it. She talks about Jesus. She talks about faith. She talks about motherhood. She talks about alcoholism. She tackles some of the most difficult, suffering places in the human heart, and she lifts them up with laughter, and has certainly given this rabbi hope when I read her and when I speak with her. And I was actually able, first time meeting her was at a Reimagine End of Life festival, just like one of these. So I want to just say how honored I am to be here with Medusa, with Mahogany, and with Annie Lamott, and all of you tonight to really delve into some of the more difficult topics that we're going to explore together.
So I thought I would start with the question that was pretty broad and a little team too much, because, you know, lover of language, I know that your ability to assess what I'm going for will, no matter what you say, it's going to sustain the listeners today. So it's a two-part question, and they both feed off of each other. How has grief led you here today? And what does love sound like?
Of course, during COVID, we all have experienced a lot of loss, or loved ones that have experienced it. But my main reason for being here is I've lost family recently, and my great aunt passed 2 weeks ago. And maybe a year prior, 2 years prior, she lost her eldest daughter. Years ago, her husband and her son were killed as well. So I have one cousin left from that particular family. And I realized when she left that it gave me the memory, and it opened a door for every family, lost one and loved one, to come and visit me. And when I say visit, like every beautiful moment, every memory, all the bad things were pushed completely out of the realm. And all I could remember was the goodness. And these people kept dipping in. My Uncle Larry, Aunt Hattie, Aunt Bob, Mama. And as they visit, I realized, oh my God, I'm here to carry on their energy, to carry on their voice, because everyone had something different to say to me that inspired me to be a better person. Just in my head, and it would happen quick. And sometimes when that happens, when I was younger, you don't know how to process that. It brings a lot of pain. And this particular time, the way it hit me, I realized that's what I need to share. That I was thoroughly inspired, that I was filled with nothing but their greatness and joy, and that I can share that with the world, even though their bodies may not be here anymore. And so I chose to be here because I want to express their love and their joy. I want them to be able to come through me and gift the world continuously, because that's the gift that I can give them.
Yes.
That's
I
why.
love how your answer is interchangeable.
Yes.
Love and grief, they're interwoven in that experience. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That was a great question to start with, Mahogany. I'm gonna toss one to you, Annie Lamott. As a person of faith, you have written a lot about how music has inspired you. Your church happens to be right down the dot from where I am right now in Marin City. And would you talk to us a little bit about what inspires you through suffering about faith?
What inspires me? I came up in the 50s, and you did not do grief. Grief was in the closet. Death was in the closet. And I can remember my granddad died when I was 6, and it was like this giant pencil eraser had just come down and erased him from our lives, because you weren't allowed to grieve, you weren't allowed to cry. It was kind of a buzzkill, and you didn't bring it up at the dinner table because it made grandma sad. And so it was just a crippling way of living, to deny death and to pretend that something really heartbreaking and kind of end of the world hadn't just happened. And so I got sober in 1986, and I realized when I wasn't drinking and using, I was just filled with grief. Every ungrieved grief, every loss, just the grief you have for the world and for the suffering and for the starving and for just it all. And it just wanted out. So I started writing about it and talking about it with people. Oh, it was so liberating. And I cried a lot, and it wasn't adorable crying like in Little Women. It was like ugly, snotty crying, because it was a lifetime of stuffed pain. And but they say if you want to heal it, you got to reveal it. And the more I talked about it, the better I could breathe. And I realized that for me, and I think for my parents and most people I know, you keep avoiding it as a way of staying out of this abyss that you imagine is opening up at your feet, because death is very real. Death is part of the cycle. We're born and we die. Samuel Beckett said, we're born astride the grave. And in my family, what you did was, you were not a human being, you were a human doing, and you did as much as you could, as fast and as perfectly as you could. And it was a way of not letting the abyss open up at your feet. And so, you know, normally most Americans just, there's the abyss, you trick it out, you go to IKEA, get a cute throw rug. But because I'm an artist, I was given permission to explore it. And what I started to explore was that you can't be fully here if you're trying to outrun death. And that if you want to be alive, if you want to burn a little bit more brightly, if you want to have a sense of immediacy, you just stop. That's what I always tell my writing students, just stop and sit with it, and the tears will come, and the tears will heal you and baptize you and hydrate you and moisturize you and grow the seeds that are at your feet that you weren't even aware had been dropped there by wayward birds. So I just started to write about it, and it turned out people were starved. They're starved for events like this. They're starved for people to say it out loud. You're gonna die. The people you love most will either die or have to bear your death. It's, you know, and people are so relieved by to talk and to hear and to read and be directed to very profound expressions of this part of our life.
You made me feel really grateful that we were able to leave the hospital after my aunt passed and go to the last great aunt that was left. And we all went through the pictures, and, you know, it brought us joy. We laughed, we joked, we dozened each other, we clowned, and it made it so much more a togetherness that happened that we were missing.
Right.
And I've been now hearing your story, feel so grateful that we were able to do that, and we didn't have to hush about that feeling.
And that hush just creates that terrible sense of isolation, you know, that it's like sheet metal inside of you, and you're a little crazy and you don't know what's going on. And then you're with other people and you're laughing and you're crying and you're overeating. That's important. If there's been a death and you're not overeating, there's something wrong.
Wait, so that's not just for the Jews, that's all religion?
No.
It's all of it, because we did a mean fish fry.
Yeah.
That's about on bar. Excellent.
Right?
Can you talk about some ways you've learned to effectively absorb some of the impact of loss? You just talked about this togetherness, cooking and laughing, and memory walks. And how has that informed your living practice?
You know, one of the prominent living practices that I do is I light a candle for the people that I lose. So that as it burns, I get to remember them all over again. They get a voice in my space, you know. I feel like they're anointing me through this candle, you know. And when I cry, you know, there's this exhale, this pain that rushes out that made me realize that's just all of them wanting to breathe out through you. That's how I took it. And once I gave it, I realized it did fill my room with an energy that I hadn't experienced. So it enlightened my space to be sad, to be hurt over it, and then to express a breath and a cadence that allowed it to be in my space. and I could turn around and swallow that cadence and bring them back to life within me. You know, so it's kind of a yoga breath that's happening with the meditative space of my people around me through this candle. And me allowing that to be allowed it to adjust my frame of mind and my space altogether.
You know, I'm so struck with that, Medusa, that, you know, we're talking so much about what's particular, but also the universal nature of grief.
Yes.
And I'm also struck by the fact that this festival is opening today physically in Lamott Park. And even though the four of us are probably in 4 different places, are one of you in Lamott Park right now?
I'm in Lamott Park.
You
yes.
are. So I'd like just to hear a little bit, you know, I went to seminary in Los Angeles, and I'd like to, for everybody here who's on Zoom and is not there with you, for you to share just a little bit with us. I'm fascinated to hear why Lamott Park. What is particular about the loss, the grief, the music that you've experienced there in your lifetime?
You know, Lamott Park, I've lived in Lamott Park for 22 years. I don't live here now, but when I did, there was the World Stage, the 5th Street Dix. Barbara Morrison Theater is new, but she was a part of that eclectic collective. Kamal Daoud, Durf. Durf was a phenomenal percussionist that we just lost recently, and he played with Dwight Tribble. So all of these names that I'm mentioning made Lamott Park the Black Art District. You know, that was the arc. If you lived anywhere in the Crenshaw district or Inglewood and you were an artist, you made it a point to make it to Lamott Park to see all of these different styles of art. The artistry that comes through there, from live oils to hip hop graffiti, is, and the hip hop is primarily from Chaos Network, Ben Caldwell. So I cut my teeth in Lamott Park on a lot of different styles of art that I am, from poetry to jazz vocalizing to emceeing, freestyling. You know, all of that is Lamott Park. So when you say, for me, what is the artist mecca of LA? It would be Lamott Park for me.
It'd be Lamott Park for everybody.
There it is. And that's why I love it, and that's why I'm here. I'm so glad they had it. We lost Barbara Morrison recently, and so we're in her theater. Her energy is all around us. You know, there's a lot of new blood in Lamott Park, and they're buying property. These are things that the elders that have passed wished had happened during their time. But during their time, no one wanted to show their hand. Now, everyone is showing their hand and accepting help and telling the truth so that we can attend and tend to one another. You know what I mean? So it's a beautiful time to be in Lamott Park right now. You know, I just have to attest to that.
Okay, I want to ask a question about music. Music and grief and our ancestors. There's this holiday, there's a couple holidays in the Jewish tradition coming up, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then the one right after that is called Sukkot. You build these temporary structures to remember the travails from slavery to freedom through the desert of the Israelite people. And there is a tradition called the Ushpizin, where you actually take the remnants, like pictures, artifacts of your ancestors, and you bring them into this temporary, totally vulnerable, open to the sun and the moon and the stars and the rain. You bring your ancestors into this temporary shelter. I know there's places in LA where there are people building them during Sukkot and living in them outside for 7 days. So there certainly is here in Northern California. My question is about our ancestors, and there's, you know, ancestral trauma, ancestral grief. All of us are living in, you know, many ways with different PTSD from our own people. And where are the ancestors and how do they inspire you? How are they strengthening your communities? And then also just your soul, I think very much about my ancestors, especially this time of year, this deeply spiritual time of year for the Jewish people. Where does that sit? How does that help with particular individual grief and communal grief for anybody?
Well, I'll start, Medusa, unless you want to burst forth. Okay, because you are music. I'm just a broken up down Sunday school teacher, but at my church, when I came in, I was drunk. So I got sober 36 years ago and I got to church 37 years ago. So I had a gap year. And most of the congregation was from the Deep South, had come to Marin City during the Great Migration. Sydney, of course, there was Marin ship over by your houseboats where they were, the government was building ships for the Navy, and there was no housing. So they created very low cost housing. And where I worship is 90% people of color. And at my church, it was mostly a lot of old ladies from the Deep South. So, it smelled like gardenias, and you didn't chew gum in church, or there would be looks that you could open oysters on. And but they were how I found my way to God, and partly because they didn't hassle me about trying to figure out anything. They could just see I was a really hurt and scared, emaciated person, and they just got me water, and then because they were older, they all died. And every time I thought, oh my God, the church, it's over, if Viola's dead, or if Mary Williams is dead, or Lily's gone. And I really felt that it was just, each person was so huge, each one of those saints. And so a couple times a year, the pastor will say, let's call out the names of the saints. And people yell, Mary Williams, Viola. And you just weep, because you weep in gratitude. You weep for the blessing of their inspiration, the hard lives they lived, and the changes that they brought to the community, and all that they fought for, and how their grandchildren's lives were so different than their own, and how what their skin felt like, and how you sat next to them and sang together. You sang the old hymns. And so to call out, a lot of organizations I've been involved with involve calling out the names of the dead. I was on the board at a program for years at San Francisco General. And a lot of the people that died there are indigenous, they're street people, and no one notices even their passing. So we did, and we always had a service for them, and we called out their name. And at the end of the month, we called out all of their names all at once. And it just fills you with a sense of community and humanity, and blessings on people who weren't being blessed by a lot of other people. Oh, Shakea, bless you. Thank you for your life here. And so there's often a calling out of the names, and there's often music, and that's because we tend to be so shut down. We have curated lives on Facebook or whatever, and my friend Russ says that when you first meet him, you're meeting his bodyguard, and we're meeting each other's curated personas, but when you play music, this Medusa, you're just doomed, because you can't protect yourself. It just gets in there so deep. It just gets into places that nothing else can get to, right? Yes. And so we sing the old hymns, or we sing the Requiem, or we do rap, we do the old folk songs of the civil rights movement. We do Joan Baez. That's why I came to church, was they were singing the old Southern hymns, and they were singing the music of the civil rights music. They were singing Pete Seeger, and anyway, and so there's got to be music, because if you want to go deep, if you're willing to do the deep dive, you need to close your eyes and just listen. because it is soul stuff. It is medicine, and it is the path to the Great Awakening music. And then I also believe, I'll just add, and I'm not being comical, it's very important that everybody eat a lot, because someone has died, someone has left us. And we all have bodies, and the bodies need food, and the bodies need water, and the bodies need a really cold Coca-Cola. It's who we are, right? So I think that those elements, and always when I do weddings, Sid, you know this, we always welcome the ancestors. We always say, because everybody visible is bringing their best self, both to weddings and funerals. They're the kind of the same ceremony. And and we welcome everyone who we can see, and we welcome everyone who we just long to see again someday in the fullness of time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
While you think of your answer, Medusa, I'm wondering, and Annie, what is the song that can bring you from the brink of grief? What song in church? What song on the radio? What song in your head that will just revive you?
Ooh, so
There's
that's
a song by the great folk singer from the 50s and 60s, Ewan McCall, and he got cancer. His wife was Peggy Seeger, Pete's sister, and somehow he wrote a song called The Joy of Living, and it's kind of an owner's manual to those left behind. You know, go outside, study the hawks, you know, he calls his children the chicks, you know, go on my chicks. And I listened to that song, and Peggy Seeger did the harmony on it. It's called The Joy of Living. And if you Google Ewan McCall, it's EWANMC capital COLL. It's on it's on whatever that thing is called, YouTube. And if my son were here, he'd be going, "Oh my God, Mom, focus." But anyway, it's one of the most beautiful songs about death I've ever heard in my life. And I can hear anything by Mozart, and I can hear, there's a hymn called Softly and Tenderly. It was one of the first songs I heard when I decided to live. And when I hear that, it breaks my heart good. You know, Carly Simon said there's more room in a broken heart.
Yeah.
It makes my heart more spacious to hear that, and to just weep again for all the saints who I miss so deeply. Evelyn McGee, how could we go on without her? Well, it turns out we didn't have to. She came back.
Love it. Love it. I would have to say, wow. So many songs that have popped in my head, but wow, Far Away by Carole King.
Oh yeah.
Deja Vu by Tina Marie. There is an album that isn't the most liked by Marvin Gaye, but he has a song explaining his addiction and how he did drugs all night in that studio. And when he walked outside, he was so high, he didn't see the children playing in the park. He didn't feel the sun on his skin properly. And at the end of the song, that was his desire to realize and to be with. He wanted to feel that. And those songs affect me when pertaining to death. You know, So Far Away by Carole King is just, may not be a church song, but that just hits my heart. With loss.
And Keith Jarrett too, because the rhythm of that and the trippiness, the way he takes you out as far as you can possibly go on the rhythms of his interpretation and his offering, and you just trust him. and you go out so far and you kind of move around and you maybe dance just a little and you swirl back to your body which is, you swirl back to your breath,
Yeah.
and it gets into me so deeply.
Mm, mm.
How about you, Mahogany? You got some?
That's a great question. I put together a really good list as of late, because I'm in this mourning process. I just lost my grandmother, and she was my last remaining grandparent, but also she's the one who raised me and my daughter. So she had a long life. I feel very grateful for her. But that thing you said, like, I miss you. So I just had to get past I'm going to be missing her part and start pulling in things that she loved, which is Al Green Essentials. Just put on Al Green Essentials. And I usually start the morning with Marvin Sapp's Never Would Have Made It, just to like get my soul back aligned. And then some Al Green.
Yeah.
Love
What
it.
about you, Sid?
Well, it's just, I'm just thinking about how powerful music is, and how you can hear a particular song and it doesn't matter where you are or who you're with, you're brought back into yourself at that like moment in your own life when you heard it, or when it was a balm for you, when it soothed you, and then it brings you soothing. And I was just thinking that the night my father died, my brother played this song by the Avett Brothers called No Hard Feelings. And just every time I hear that, I think about my ability to just, as you said, the ugly tears, the letting go, and it being okay to just cry and cry, and what music can do that's powerful for our souls, can release us from that sense of don't cry, don't show anybody, I don't want to be weak. I don't want anybody to know how amazing it is that a song can bring us to that place, or many songs, the Avett Brothers.
Yeah. Or even the verbiage that your lost one used a lot, when the family comes together, we use it on each other. It's like, oh, that was Mama saying, oh, that was Aunt Bob saying, you know what I mean? And that's like music for us to be able to use those little quirky phrases in the right way at the right time. You know what I mean? And the food, you're absolutely right. If someone doesn't make those black eyed peas just like Mama made, you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it is about the taste. Like, oh, Aunt Hattie made the upside down pineapple cake. It has to be exactly the way she made it. And when everything is in that spread, they all exist again.
And also, I think what you said is so important, and it's important for Mahogany to know right now too, is that it's acute right now, and there's just no negotiating with a broken heart. It's just what it is. And then what's happened with me, with a few my most important people, was that little by little, I mean, I still miss people. I cried the other day for my best friend who died 30 years ago. I can't stand she's not here. And another best friend died, and I'm doing the eulogy on Saturday, and I hate it, and I don't agree to it, and I don't have a very beautiful, lofty position on it all. But what happens is that it becomes integrative, the acuity with the gratitude, and with the longing with their presence, and you will hear music, and it was their music, and you will look around and you'll say her name out loud, and I hear a Judy Collins song, who knows where the time goes, and I'll go, Mom, and I'll try not to do it out loud in public, but I'm usually in public when I might hear a song playing, or Mozart, and I'll sing, Mom, Mom. Or my dad loved jazz, Thelonious Monk and the Modern Jazz Quartet, and I'll hear it playing, and I'll listen to it with them. And we'll listen to it together, and the music can take us to a place we can't get to otherwise, except through dreams.
There it is. Accept your dreams. Yes, ma'am.
I hate to interrupt this beautiful landscape of music, food, feelings, and beautiful impressions, but I want to shift gears a little bit for us. And I've asked the four of you to offer some creative expression in honor of Lamott Park and in honor of this festival. So I'd love for each of you to offer something to us. And then I'll ask all of you to respond to your offerings.
Mm.
Maybe we can kick it off with Mahogany.
I was like,
Wait, you're muted, dear.
there we go. I said I knew that would happen right as I was looking for something to share. Okay. I will try this. Since I brought her name up. How will they know you are healed? If you never wear the expensive dress and point out the value of your smile over the weight of the price tag, how will they know what healing looks like? If they can't spy who's in your Insta stories, if they can't follow your journey online, if they can't see you frolicking during your sabbatical, if they don't know how your process, your hyper awareness, your emotional acuteness gives you enough rope to hang a nightmare, the way you forgive no one, not even yourself. Can you be honest enough with the howling in your chest? Does it sound like failure? Does it sound like your own certain step into the doors of a clinic? I have learned to live a true life. I have lied to keep my ego alive. I have lied to kill my ego too. I am not as important in your head as I think. I am not as important in these poems as I think, which is to mean nothing here will remain except love. I have learned to give my all to a space and leave my womb empty. If womb is another word for hands, heart, body, mind, soul, more than organs, more like celestial sphere, a radius of heat and hurt so profound the entire earth spins like a child's toy. I have learned to love the most fleeting beings like this, even today, which feels like a nightmare before the dream is restored. Sweet sleep milk, each eye a witness. I flutter a return to REM even today, when nothing but water, murky and Mississippi thick with death. There is still a way to remember your own reflection, your own goodness, your high vibrations. Tremble the trickled liquid, a return, a rememory, a recollection. How will they know what healing looks like if you've already discovered you are all you need? You are what is real. You are right where you need to be. You are right who you need to be. Dear you, before you evolve, new chapter, new water, new hope restored, new faith, new gate, new glory, all yours. And today, all of this flooding is a declaration of how you deserve to feel, how you got the right to spill and touch the good side too, how your eyes got the right to pour open salt wounds and rake clean the shame that silence guarantees. How will they know you are healed unless you are willing to break? So levee snap, love, yes, levee burst, love. I mean, wash everything you see with your voice, open wide and slaughter the dry crop until rich roots reach through the soil and sings, dear you, who remains here anyway, log or loom, flight or forgiveness. Every way you have arrived is a symbol for stay. Stay a while. Friend, I love you. I am you. I hurt when you hurt too, and every way in which you leave is an absolute choice. But if you can choose to stay, stay a bit longer. Please consider me home.
Oh,
Thank
beautiful,
Goosebumps.
Beautiful.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Wow.
Annie, your offering, please.
Okay, I brought a couple of pages from some book or another. An elderly friend asked me one day when we wandered through a church garden and it started to rain, what 3 things I would share with her young relative who fears death, as she knows I view death mostly as a significant change of address. The first thing I told her is that I have been on hand to help people cross over, been there for days and months at the end of a person's life. And while I would prefer that all deaths be swift and sweet without dementia or pain, every death has been rather beautiful. Second, the more time you spend in the presence of death, the less you fear it. Your life will be greatly enhanced by spending time with dying people, even though you've been taught to avoid doing so. And third, death is not the enemy. Snakes are, and cheese. Cheese is addictive and irresistible. I have had 3 kinds so far today. Shakespeare said we all owe God a death. That's very nice. If I were God's West Coast representative, I would try to work out some of the lone details of having to die. We can all agree that children should be exempt, that dementia should always be the spaced out dithery kind and not involve screaming. The pain should always be manageable, and that wars should be avoided through wise diplomacy, goodwill, and political sanity. In lieu of these codicils, though, while people in dreadful pain of any kind may long for the solace of a divine continuing manifestation, what we can offer is to stay with them faithfully. This may not seem like a lot until we show up for you, and we will. I asked my friend in the garden if I could add 2 more thoughts that might help her dear relative's mind be at peace. She agreed. Anytime you investigate how scary and bad loss is, it becomes a lot less bad, and a lot less bad is a small miracle. The great paradox is that drawing nearer to death will help begin to put it in the rearview mirror. Then instead of living in unconscious fear of its arrival, crashing our party, we accept it as one of the musicians, like the old Bremen town donkey with his lute. And I promise that the people you lose here on this side of eternity, whom you can no longer call or text, will live fully again, both in your heart and in the world. They will make you smile and talk out loud at the most inappropriate times. Of course, their absence will cause lifelong pangs of homesickness, but grief, friends, time, and tears will heal you to a great extent. Somehow we get older, as we get older, death becomes as sacred as birth. And while we don't exactly welcome it, death does become a friend. Death is not what you feared as a child. It is both more interesting and more casual, with fewer worms involved. It is usually really doable, astonishing and plain, like notes played without sharps or flats, a natural G of A flat, or succulents instead of roses.
Thank you, Annie. Medusa,
Yes.
you are next.
Wow. My first experience with death was my auntie. They say she went to heaven. And I said, could you throw down a piece of heaven? And all of a sudden there was a street, Degnan, where all the artistry of LA took place. It almost created Black movie sets. And no matter how many lives were lost in the mix of jazz and poetry, I still hear their steps. They follow me all the way to 43rd. I'm like, what do you want me to do, right or left? Either way you choose, Monet, know that you will be protected and selected to maneuver our energy through the streets of this arc we call the Mert Park. So I took on the duty. I became that one so that I can go from man to woman all throughout Lamott Park, hold hands until the dusk came, until we licked the sun and created new light. And the new light is you, because you knew nothing about Lamott Park until tonight. I'm doing this in a heartfelt freestyle because freestyling is my musical delight. If I didn't have something like Chaos Network or Chaos in the Network, I couldn't become more than what I am. They're so busy worried about propaganda sitting in front of a computer, they can't take a lyrical stand. So I'm gonna do it for you. I hear it in the parking lot, on drugs, slipping us threats. But when I feel that, I have Richard from 5th Street Deck still giving me his steps. Mama, I'm gonna rub your back and your chest because I got your back and your front. But remember this, when it comes to being who you are, Gangsta goddess, about Lamott Park, don't you ever stunt or front. So I won't do that. I stand up strong and represent feline science. They call me Top Cat. Lamott Park and all of you now are the alliance of what the step is next. Thank you. And whenever you in my arc, remember the steps.
We will, Top Cat. Thank you. And now, Reb Sid.
So I brought a little horn.
That is no little.
This is a shofar. This is the blaster that's supposed to wake us up, not just the Jews. Everybody needs to wake up.
See.
And it's not an alarm clock for our bodies, it's an alarm clock for our souls. And we blow it once a year. And during this entire month before Rosh Hashanah, when the dawn comes, you're supposed to blow your shofar. Wake yourself up. And so I wanted to offer a blessing and then blow the shofar. And it's probably going to sound pretty bad if it's coming through your computer or your iPad or your phone, but just imagine. This horn, this shofar is my own sacred voice. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the one who blessed our fathers and our mothers, our granddads and our grandmoms, Yivarech kol haaretz ha'adamah. May the divine source, the presence of the universe, bless the land, the Adamah, the Aish, the fire, the Mayim, the water, the Shemayim, the heavens, the Ruach, the wind, the Nefesh, my spirit, the Sechel, my head, the Guf, my body, the Livavot, all of our hearts. Today we are all in the midst of suffering and living, dying and living, loving and living, losing and living, grieving and living, longing and living, laughing and living. We ask for the blast of this shofar to awaken all of us, to allow our grief to live in us, to live with compassion, loving kindness, to wake up to the deep need for justice, for peace, and simply for love. Tekiah. This horn, this shofar, is my own sacred voice.
It's from so
Amen, amen.
inside the earth. It's so deep. It's the earth speaking through you. Beautiful. Thank you, Sydney.
We have a few minutes. I wanted to know if the four of you wanted to offer some final reflections for us. Any reflections on each other's creative offerings? Please go ahead.
Well, I'd love to read these lines of Rilke's from a letter he wrote. He said, I'm not saying that we should love death, but rather that we should love so generously without picking and choosing that we automatically include it, life's other half, in our love. This is what actually happens in great expansiveness of love, which cannot be stopped or constricted. It is only because we exclude it that death becomes more and more foreign to us and ultimately our enemy. And I think that is just so true, that when you can be with it, when you can sit with it, when you can cry and cry and cry, that everything in you becomes more expansive. You can hold more, you can love more, you can love bigger, you can breathe better. Everything becomes fresh again.
I really appreciate how we shared today, because it really makes all of us realize that we're not so different. You know, we feel the same way. We address our families in the same way. We appreciate them when they're gone in the same way, hurt in the same exact way. So I appreciate everyone being so transparent that we could see ourselves in each other.
Mhm. I'm so grateful to Reimagine too for bringing people together to say out loud things we've been afraid to say, and to go places where we always knew were there, but that we needed company to go to. So thank you. You three have been just such wonderful company for me.
I got you.
Well, I wouldn't want to spend an hour before Rosh Hashanah with anybody else but the three of you, I gotta tell you. I knew it was going to be meaningful, and as much as I love being two-dimensional, what I usually find is when I meet people and we're open-hearted and we share of ourselves, I want to meet you three-dimensionally.
Yes,
Annie
I
and
agree.
I
I would love that.
love to be together.
Reb Sid, Mahogany Browne,
All time.
Medusa, Annie Lamott, thank you so much. Before we go, I just want to give another plug for the opening night showcase, which follows this event. And if you love Medusa tonight, you're going to hear more of Medusa at Barbara Morrison Theater virtually. So the page that you got from us also includes the link to the separate Zoom link for the showcase. So join us in half an hour. You can take a break, come back in half an hour and join us for the showcase. And then we've got our workshops tomorrow. And then we've got our virtual street festival finale on Saturday. So please join us. And I just want to quote one of our Zoom guests tonight who put in the chat, talking to the four of you, you are all warm and wonderful female spirits. That is the truth. So thank you. And I wish all of you a good night. And we hope to see you at Lamott Park, virtually or in person. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.